name is Miranda, and today I'm here to review The Last Laugh by Mindy McGinnis. This is the second and final book in the duology that started with The Initial Insult. So I've been waiting for this book for a long time, and not even because I loved Initial Insult that much. I actually was kind of very disappointed with it. I think it just was more abstract than I was thinking. Like there were, if you've read it, there's like points of view from like the orangutan that Tress is friends with, and the panther I think had a point of view, and it just, to me, it felt like, and again I think that was the point, but like everything that Tress was blaming on Felicity was not really Felicity's fault. Like yes, Felicity could have done more, but Felicity was kind of just suffering from the bystander effect, where she wasn't like actively harming her, she was just kind of standing back while other, like, you know, and like she was a kid for a lot of it too. Like she was as old as Tress was, and you can't always expect a like little kid, a teenager, to stand up to their parents like a preteen and be like no, because even if she did, it might not have worked out. So like I just didn't walk away having a lot of sympathy for Tress, and considering that the end of The Initial Insult ends with her killing Felicity, I wasn't super pumped about the book, but I really wanted to read the second one to see how it all wrapped up. So my initial plan was, I'll get it, I'll skim it just to see how everything happens, because I honestly didn't think Felicity was going to be dead. I just think that that was such a like decisive move to really make Tress like the villain, and I just never thought that she was gonna really be dead. So I wanted to see how that wrapped up, and then obviously right before she died, Felicity had this epiphany of a flashback to remembering that Tress's cousin Ribbit had been the one that was there that night that Tress's parents died, and was the one who actually pulled Felicity out of the river and was, you know, there and hasn't said anything to his cousin Tress about being there when her parents died. So we had this big revelation, and yeah, I just didn't love the book, but I wanted to see how it wrapped up. So I get the book, I'm like, alright, I'll skim it and just see what happens. That was my plan going in. Immediately, I am drawn in. Like, this book was so good, and like putting it together with the first book, I still don't love the first book because it is kind of confusing and stuff, and like the whole like plague and all that that's going on is very weird, but like that stuff's done. You know, like the plague was a 24-hour thing they explained very quickly, and kind of just I think to make it like creepier. And then this book actually, while the first one was the cask of, I don't know how you say that name, I'm so sorry, my friend Jess would be crying right now if she knew that, but the cask, you know, where like you brick the person up. This one is more a telltale heart, because Tress, at the end of The Initial Insult, walked away with a pretty severe injury from the panther. It got her in the arm, and spends the majority of the book dying, basically like bleeding out, like honestly surprised that like she didn't die from that injury. And as she starts to like get weaker and weaker, she has that best friend necklace that she had with Felicity, and she starts imagining Felicity's like beating heart through it, like, talking to her and stuff. So that's definitely more of the Poe inspiration in this one. But the biggest change is that Felicity's point of view, since the last one was Felicity and Tress's mainly, also with the panther, the orangutan thrown in there, Felicity's point of view is swapped out for Ribbit's, which I have to say was super interesting, and I really liked. I feel like what made it hard with Tress and Felicity's point of views is you're getting Tress being like, you're a terrible person, blah blah blah, like all this stuff happened, and then immediately we go to Felicity's point of view and see her point of view with it, and I'm like, oh, now I understand. Like, I don't, like, Tress, you're a monster. Like, I don't feel bad. Like, I feel bad for Felicity. Whereas this one, Ribbit is really the bad guy. So you kind of get more of a juxtaposition of seeing like where Tress is coming from and where Ribbit's coming from, and how Tress does not know what we know about Ribbit, and that adds this whole layer of intensity to it. And just getting Ribbit's point of view, I mean, really increases the character in my mind. They changed the cover too. I think, like, I'm assuming when you change like the cover, the paperback edition changes too. And I liked the original cover for The Initial Insult, but the cover for The Last Laugh just is so good. Like, it just encapsulates, I think, the story, and having like Ribbit and Tress like overlapped over each other, and this whole idea of like, you know, like who's gonna come out on top, and the idea of someone closest to you when Tress really doesn't have a lot of people that she trusts. The idea that someone who she does consider someone close to her is betraying her in such a big way and she doesn't know it is really like, whew, it makes it very entertaining to read. And I think just the more we found out about Ribbit, like in the first book, he wasn't there really. We just knew about like he was kind of the people pleaser that did everything everyone wanted to, and like this little like cousin that Tress had to look out for because he'll get taken advantage of pretty quickly. This one, we go so much more into the idea of the family names, and I think this is what the series all harkens back to, is this idea of legacy and a name to be carried on, and how that can really infect lives and infect people where they are not living their lives to be themselves, but to uphold this legacy, and what an idea of like a crumbling legacy looks like, and how people are desperate to keep hold of any pieces they can. And what I really liked about this was that the whole reason this kind of started was the older generation. So Tress's mom and Ribbit's mom and kind of some other people that were around in that generation just made some really terrible decisions and continue to make terrible decisions. And Tress's parents weren't innocent. Like, they got killed, yes, and that's tragic, but I like that they showed the morally gray sides to everyone. And obviously I think they kind of leaned towards Tress's parents were trying their best at the end, and it just was too little too late, whereas Ribbit's mom and stuff has not changed her ways at all. And there were so many good plot twists. I don't want to like spoil it just because I was like shocked, but there's one that happens with Hugh that I was like, what the heck? And then there's one that happens with her grandpa that I was also like, I'm reading the book, and I was like, like it fell out of my hand when I got to the part. I was like, you're kidding me, because it was just so good. Like, I think the action and the ante in this one was definitely revved up because it only takes place in like a few days overall, but the first book took place over like a whole night, which is fine, but it just kind of made us stuck in the setting of like it was only like at the party, and obviously like downstairs where Tress was torturing and interrogating Felicity, and then upstairs where everything's going on with Ribbit. This one expanded the town more, and you could kind of learn more about like the family and, you know, like how they all had these different legacies all going in them. And Tress even says at one point like she has 3 of the big family founding of the town's names in her, and just like how that idea of just like legacy and like a last name is so important, and how it's really poisoned all these people and like gotten people killed for nothing. And I think the journey she goes on is definitely a learning journey. What I liked is she's definitely like from the start like, oh my gosh, I killed Felicity, and like that really shakes her to her core, realizing that Felicity didn't know anything, and like she had this idea of an enemy in her head for so long and it wasn't the right one. So that kind of makes it where you see where she's not so distrusting of Ribbit, and it kind of makes sense why she's like not realizing what's right in front of her. And he also does do a really good job of hiding it. There's also then this separate running storyline with Ribbit where he's planning this honestly horrific thing, and it's super dark, and like the event does happen and you're like, oh my good gracious, like it's just like what a note to end it on. And I wish it had gone differently, but it also, that's the way it needed to happen for Tress's storyline to wrap up, I think, and for her to have contentness. I was just so impressed. Like I said, I think the best part of this was Tress, like I could be more on her side for this one and just see more of like what a survivor and fighter she is, because she has survived so many things when she should not have, and they point that out multiple times. Like Tress, Ribbit, her grandpa, like multiple people point out that this girl is a survivor, and getting Ribbit's point of view really adds into it, because you also like, you knew in the first book from Felicity's point of view that Ribbit kind of had like a crush on her, but in Ribbit's point of view, like you kind of learn more now how he feels like they're like truly connected, and like he's the one that has to save her, because at this point the town just assumes she's missing. He's the one that has to save her because like it's their destiny to be together. And it's just like super, like it makes you realize how creepy Ribbit really is, that like he thinks he's owed Felicity because of him saving her, and how they have like this connection or something, not thinking like when you find out just how deep he's involved in this plot that she would be horrified by that. I also really love the scene. It's a bit spoilery, but I feel like if you read the book, like you know what's gonna happen when they find Felicity. And I think it's so good, just like I could see it perfectly in my head, the action scene of them taking down Ribbit together. And I think that really like, I liked that scene when like Felicity like attacked him and he was like, what are you doing? Like, we're supposed to be together. And like realize like, no, like you've made this fantasy la la land all by yourself that no one wants to be a part of, because that's kind of the whole idea, you know, that's the world Ribbit's been living in, where like his mom is so into their last name and the legacy of that they think they're entitled to something. And I just really love seeing Tress and Felicity on the same side again. And I just love that whole scene of like Tress realizing like that Felicity's trying to warn her about Ribbit, and she's not just like being like, oh, Ribbit's here too. And then, you know, Tress realizing like, oh my gosh, I've been betrayed by the only people that I consider close to me, and realizing, you know, and she even, oh, what does she say that I love? She has a line, oh, he's like, any last words or whatever, and she's like, you'll always be like, just a mama's boy, like a little bitch, whatever she tells you to do. And it was just so, so good. So I really liked it, and I was super surprised by how much I liked it. I think it definitely redeemed the series in my eyes and does make it a worthwhile read when you read both of them together, in my opinion. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it was so, so good and so much more creepier than the first one, which I know sounds weird because, like, there's not someone getting bricked up behind a wall like there was in the first one, but just like the whole addition of getting Ribbit's point of view and him planning this thing and us knowing, and him talking to the people that are involved in the plan, and you're being like, no, stop, and also Tress, like, her arm and bleeding out for the majority of this book and getting, it's just, oh my gosh, so, so good. So yeah, if you have checked out this series or this book and have any thoughts about it, let me know in the comments down below what you thought, if you thought it was a satisfying conclusion to the duology. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!